Good evening, everybody. This is the second meeting of the Charter Review Committee, February 12th, 2026. I'll begin with a roll call since we have several members on Zoom. Dawn Anderson. Nate Bodwin.
Here.
Mike Bruni.
Here.
Angelina Correa.
Here.
Skip Courier.
Here.
Bob DeToma.
Here.
Dan Fitzgerald.
Here.
Mark Haydad.
Here.
Jeff Hess.
Here.
Andy Jefferson.
Here.
John Kelly.
Here.
Jim Malloy. Greg Marr.
Here.
Angela Rahman.
Here.
And I guess David Robbins is here, I think. So we have 13 out of 15 members present. That does constitute a quorum. Let's dig right into our agenda here. We have town council with us. We will get to town council in just a moment. I wanted to begin the meeting with just an update on the status of the current charter, which several of us were discussing at the previous meeting. I have worked with Amy Berry, the town clerk, to post a basically guaranteed, vetted, up-to-date version of the charter on the website. It's a bit accessible from the Charter Committee's webpage as well as the town clerk and the town administrator. I had gone through that detailed history of the charter and compared all the actions that have been taken since the beginning with the current version of the charter, and so as best as I can tell, it is absolutely positively up to date. I am in possession of a Word version of the current charter document, which can be shared amongst the committee as necessary, which we can use as the basis for doing our edits. Any questions on that?
Thank you for doing that.
So, here, the most important part of our evening. With us is Chris Brown, our town council. We've invited him here for a discussion with the Charter Committee, basically on any and all topics of interest to this committee that council might be able to answer for us. I've listed a few. I think some of us may have questions or like some clarification on how the conflict of interest law applies to the committee. We were designated as special town employees, and that has a particular meaning. It's of interest to many of us because if I counted right, 9 of us have positions as elected officials or appointed to various other boards and committees. So that's where the special designation of special employee comes into play. So if we can start with that, tell us what you think could be helpful, and of course, any questions that anybody has, do feel free to speak up and ask.
Sure. So I'll start. Can everyone hear me? Can you people online hear me too?
Yes, I'm getting nods on
Okay.
the Zoom
Yes.
page.
Just want to make sure it's all live. So I'll start with the special municipal employee issue since you brought that up. So you're all, whether you're a volunteer or whether you're elected, appointed, whether you get paid or not, when you provide service to the town in whatever capacity you're in, you're considered a municipal employee for purposes of the conflict of interest law. Now, some positions can be designated what's called a special employee. They have special employees at the state level, county level, and municipal level. That designation applies to this position. So as a Charter Review Committee member, that position is a special municipal employee, but if you're on another board, it matters also what that position is.
Yeah, sorry, can I interrupt for just a moment?
Yep.
I meant to have everybody go around and introduce themselves to you, so let's
Sure. Why don't
get
we
that out of the way.
that first? Okay.
Starting with Bob.
Bob DeToma. I work for Grafton TV. I'm the chair of the Veterans Advisory Committee and trustees of Soldiers and Sailors.
Nice to meet you, Bob.
I'm Mark Haddad. I'm on the Finance Committee as well.
Hunter Curry, I'm on the Finance Committee and one of the members of the Nelson Trust.
Nice to meet you.
Dan Fitzgerald, poll worker.
Greg Marr, Finance Committee, CIPC, and Election Warden.
Dave Robbins, elected member of the Planning Board, serve also on the Housing Authority as a state appointee, and this committee, of course, and Information Technology Committee.
Hello, my name is Nate Bodwin. This is my first endeavor into town affairs, so this is what's on my resume for Grafton Town Government.
You're in the right room, so.
Yeah, okay.
That's the first.
Jack Kelly, elected the Housing Authority, Chairman of the Housing Authority, and delegate on the Community Preservation Commission.
And Jefferson, zoning board.
Are you, Andy?
Can know you.
Yeah, so,
Let's get those on Zoom too.
Yeah.
Jeff?
oh, sorry. That's right, we have to remember.
Jeff Hess, just here on the Charter Review Committee.
Angela?
Angela Rahman, like Nate and Jeff, this is my first involvement in Grafton government.
Angelina?
Angelina Correa, I'm on the Finance Committee.
Mike?
Mike Burney, former Recreation Commission member, and also several years as a youth coach in town for lacrosse.
Thank you.
Nice to meet you.
Sorry. Okay, now let's get back to
Okay.
where I was so rudely interrupted, Chris.
Yeah, so as I was saying, whether you knew it or not before today, you're all considered municipal employees for purposes of the conflict of interest law. Typically, every municipal employee, when you get sworn in on a board, you get various things from the town clerk, right? You'll get usually a copy of the open meeting law, some information about that, a summary of the conflict of interest law, and you're usually expected to complete some online training within a certain amount of time. Does any of that not sound like something you've heard before?
That better sound familiar to us.
Okay.
Those of us who have served in other positions obviously have been through and have periodically refreshed the training. For those who are new to this committee, they will have received from the town clerk some information about that. And I don't know what the deadline is for them to actually have taken the training.
Yeah,
But-
usually it's within 30 days of when you get appointed. I don't think that there's, a police force coming out and rounding up people that are not in compliance with that, but, it's a good idea to take that because, it comes into what you do in a variety of different ways that you wouldn't think of. It's not really intuitive all the time. So, anyway, so we all have to take this training. I take the training because I'm a municipal employee as a contracted, basically I'm a contracted vendor for the town, right? I have a contract with the town, so I have to do that. The attorneys that work with me, that work for you, they all take that training too. So, so the conflict of interest law, obviously, it's designed to prevent situations in which your duties as a municipal employee might conflict with your interests as a private citizen, right? Where the special municipal employee designation comes into play is that there's some positions where, this isn't your day job, you don't get compensated or you don't work full-time in the position. And those are the types of positions that in a town, a select board can vote to designate those positions as special municipal employees. What does that mean? It means that for those positions that are designated as that, some provisions of the conflict of interest law apply less strictly to you, okay? There's two specific sections of 268A, which is the general law that is the conflict of interest law. One of them deals with appearing on behalf of people other than the town before a town board. Whether, the example might be if you are an architect by trade during the day and you have a client that has an application before the planning board, for example. Ordinarily, Section 17 would prevent you, if you're serving on a board as a municipal employee, from doing that. For special municipal employees, you might be able to, the requirements under Section 17 are a little bit different, okay? What I would suggest, if that sounds like something that might be something that applies to you, right? Like if you, in your day job, appear before town boards of Grafton, okay, this doesn't impact your ability to appear before other town boards. This is just the municipality in which you're serving as a municipal employee. My suggestion would be to either contact me, which the town administrator can put you in contact with me, the chair can put you in contact with me, or there's always the State Ethics Commission has a free confidential hotline. You can contact, I think you can contact them by phone, email. They have a form you can fill out. They usually will get back to you within a day. Not always, but I will usually get back to you within a day, most of the time. So, but yeah, I mean, I guess my main point is I can help you before you break the law, but I can't help you after you break the law. So it's worth it to look before you jump. Okay. The other section of the conflict of interest law that changes if you're a special municipal employee is section 20, and that deals with having a financial interest in a contract with the municipality in which you're serving. Okay. Normally this means that, for example, if you're employed in one position for the town, you can't work in a second position for the town that's compensated unless there's an exception that applies in that section, section 20. If you're a special municipal employee, there's several different exceptions that might apply to you that would allow you to have a financial interest in a contract with the town of Grafton, okay? So again, if that sounds like a situation that might apply to you, call me, call the State Ethics Commission, talk through the facts with them, with me, so that you can get a good opinion and be safe and follow the law, okay? Any questions on that particular issue before we move on?
Any questions? I think,
So just one comment that if you have a compensated position, there is a form you need to fill out if you're appointed to an uncompensated position.
Right, so there's, again, I don't want to get into individual people's situations. We're all responsible for our own compliance with the law, okay? So hopefully, you are reviewing the information that you get from the town clerk, in this position. You're completing the training, and if you have questions, and if you think you need to make disclosures or fill out forms and that type of thing, you can, like I said, contact me, contact the Ethics Commission. There's lots of information on their website. I just encourage you to take that step for your own protection.
I think one question that might come up for those of us who also serve on other boards or committees, in our role as charter committee member, is there, with respect to the work that the charter revisions might touch on, for example, as a planning board member, the previous charter review committee discussed and proposed having the planning board be appointed rather than elected. Now, that's not likely to come up this time.
That's because Dave's the chair and he'd rule it out of all.
And for the several members who are on the finance committee, there's a sections of the charter that deal with the finance committee. Would there be any reason for any of us to recuse ourselves from discussion on charter matters that touch on the other bodies we may be involved in?
I mean, I think the one thing that comes to mind for me would be if you get a stipend or you're compensated at all for that position, there could be a financial interest, and if anything changes about it. Typically, when the question comes up about someone serving on multiple boards, you have to, we assume that when you're acting on your capacity in whatever board, that you're acting in the town's best interest. So serving on two boards is not in and of itself a conflict. If you want to disclose that, so that there's not an appearance of a conflict of interest, there's a section in the conflict of interest law called 23B3. It's a very popular disclosure that people make out of an abundance of caution, just to dispel the appearance of a conflict of interest. I don't think you have to in that situation, but there's nothing that stops you from doing it anyway.
So if we want to change the budget process and have the finance committee play a different role in the budget process, as a member of the finance committee, I have no problem making that proposal as a member of the charter committee, correct?
That's correct.
Except for the compensation.
Yeah.
All,
Well, I only put in $10,000 a meeting.
all the grief you can eat.
So
And we'll
if,
talk about that, but I don't, compensation of the chart of, that's probably not something that's going to go into the charter anyway, but,
Correct.
Yes,
no, you
if-
shouldn't
right.
act on those types of things.
if we were to propose that finance committee members be compensated, say, $5,000 a year for all their hard work, the FinCom members of the charter committee might be advised to not touch that conversation.
Exactly. Yeah, I would, if that comes up, that's
It's
the
not
type of situation where you,
Yeah.
where you want to, if it, I always say, if it sounds funny to you or it smells funny, like, it's probably good thing not to eat it, right?
Yeah.
So something I looked at was called self-dealing. Self-dealing.
Yes.
And so would that designation apply in this board piece we're talking about, whether it's?
No, because self-dealing is, in the concept of your own private interest. So that's, the section that applies there is called Section 19. And usually it would prevent you from participating in a matter in which you or your family member or your business, if you're a business owner, that they have a financial interest in whatever that matter is.
So it still goes back to financial interest.
Correct.
Thank you.
Correct.
Any other questions for Chris? Anybody on Zoom? If not, thank you for that, Chris. And just a reminder to everybody, if you have any questions about your particular situation, like Chris said, contact Chris, contact the Ethics Commission, and for specific questions that relate to your particular situation.
Okay.
All right, so the next topic I had on my list, and again, we're going to end up with ask Chris anything you can think of asking, but the next specific topic I suggested Chris can address are the procedures for amending the charter, of which basically there are two, and there's a variation of one.
Let's do my presentation.
But I'll let you. I mean, I think I know them pretty well, and I'd be happy to talk about it myself. But I think it's better coming from someone who is an actual lawyer and knows this stuff.
Oh, okay. So first thing I want to say is I appreciate all of you for what you're doing. I did this in my town too. It's a lot of work, as hopefully you don't know yet, but for those of you who've done it before, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it's a very important thing. Charters, if you think of, everything kind of on the local level being analogous to the state and federal, charter is your constitution, okay? It's that kind of durable document that is really hard to change because it's really important. And as Dave said, there's only a couple ways to change it. Now, Grafton enacted the charter by a Home Rule Charter Commission process back in the 80s, the current version, right? So once you enact that type of charter, there's two ways that you can amend it at a later point. The first one is the Home Rule Charter Amendment procedure. Under that, basically there's a proposed amendment to the charter that gets brought to town meeting. Okay, and then town meeting has to approve that. And then, assuming that town meeting approves it by a 2/3 vote, okay, that becomes a proposed charter amendment by the town. It then has to be filed with two different offices at the state level. The Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities, which used to be DHCD. Don't ask me why they review charters, but they've been doing it since the Home Rule Amendment was passed in the 60s, okay? The other agency that gets involved is the Attorney General, which shouldn't be a surprise. They review all of our bylaws before they actually become effective. Why wouldn't they also review charter amendments too, right? So those agencies have a job to basically opine on whether your amendments are consistent with the Constitution and the laws of the state. Okay? They have a certain amount of time. I think the AG has 4 weeks to render an opinion, and the amendment then becomes finalized. That doesn't mean that it's effective yet, though, because at that point, the proposed amendment then has to go to the voters. So there's a ballot question vote, shall the charter be amended in the manner, and you would have a bunch of stuff published with it. There's a statutory question that's the form is prescribed by law. There's things the select board has to do in terms of distributing that proposed amendment to the voters. The town clerk has to post copies, have additional copies available. And if it's approved, if that question gets approved by a majority of the voters, it becomes effective on the date provided in the amendment. And then after it's adopted, you send, the town clerk would have to do this. They'd send a certified copy of the amendment to the state archives, the attorney general, and the Secretary of Housing and Livable Communities, who is the cabinet position that runs the EOHLC, that Executive Office of Housing and Livable Communities.
DHCD rolled off the tongue much better than UHLC does.
And then you'd be surprised, but this is actually a statutory requirement. At least every 10 years, the select board is supposed to make a copy of the charter available at the office of the town clerk for a cost, for a fee. That's actually a statutory thing.
Does any town ever do that?
I don't know. Good question. I've never had that one come up to me before. That's a new one.
I'm sure the town clerk would be happy to print you a copy
Yeah.
if need cost.
Yeah, I mean, I think in this day and age with a lot of websites have it there, so
Yep.
you probably don't get the people coming in saying, can I buy a copy of the charter? But I suppose if they did, that should be there. Okay, so that's the first way that you can amend a home rule charter like yours, okay? The second way is what's called a special act amendment procedure. This is pretty commonly followed, and I'll explain why as I go through it, okay? So this amendment procedure has fewer steps, and it doesn't contain the same restrictions, which I didn't talk about before. So you have a home rule charter, and if you propose an amendment to town meeting, and you were going to do the charter amendment procedure that I just described, there's some amendments to the charter that you can't use that process to change. And I'm going to look at this, I'm going to read you what the statute says because it's important to have it exact. Okay, so any amendment that relates in any way to the composition, mode of election or appointment, or the terms of office of the legislative body, meaning town meeting, the Board of Selectmen or the Select Board, or the town manager or town administrator, whatever you have. So, and then there's provisions that are restricted in a section of the law, which I'd have to, I can send that to you, but I don't have it here. But the important thing is you can't fundamentally change kind of the organization of the town government through this process. That doesn't mean you can't. It just means that if you're going to do that, those types of changes, those have to go through what's called this special act charter amendment procedure.
Or an elected charter commission.
Right, which I'll get to that too.
Yeah.
You guys don't have to worry about that though, because you have a charter review committee. Okay.
Yeah.
But so the special act charter amendment procedure, okay, it's got fewer steps. It doesn't contain those restrictions on the content. Basically, if you've ever been to town meeting and you've seen the town petition to file legislation with the general court, that's a home rule petition. Essentially, what you're doing in this type of procedure is you're voting on a petition to the general court to amend your charter. And they'll pass a special act, and it'll say, Grafton charters amended in the following ways. So that amendment has to be authorized by town meeting, okay? Just like any other home rule petition. But unlike the other one that I talked about, it's only a majority vote that you need, not 2/3. Once town meeting votes on it, the petition and the special legislation, like whatever the actual amendments are, they get sent to the local legislative delegation for filing. And then it follows the same process as any other bill on Beacon Hill. It would need to be approved by the House and the Senate, and then it's signed by the governor. Sometimes, but not all the time, those types of special acts might have to be accepted by the voters after. I think that's not required, but it would be a policy judgment on your end. You know, if you thought that the changes being proposed, you would want to have the voters approve it after. But that
You would
not-
put that in the town meeting vote though, right? Requiring the vote of the electors afterwards.
Right, it would be in the text of whatever the article was at town meeting, you know, essentially, here's the petition we want you to file, and we want these amendments, and we want the amendments to be approved by the voters at an election. And so that special act would provide that.
So what happens if the legislature approves of it, comes back and it doesn't pass at the vote?
Doesn't pass.
It doesn't pass,
doesn't
so the
pass.
charter's not amended,
Nothing.
correct.
So is it true that the legislature can require that vote even if we don't say that in the petition?
I think they can. Usually your local legislator will work with the town in terms of what you want and don't want. You know, because obviously the legislator's not trying to substitute its judgment for yours. I mean, you guys will have spent probably a year or more on this by the time that it's done. It's a lot of work, and I don't think they want to second guess, you know, what you decided would be the best procedure, you know, assuming town meeting agreed with you, right? I mean, a town meeting could also amend something on the floor to, you know, or, you know, through that process, like any article, the vote on any article would get amended, right? So they could add a vote requirement at town meeting, but you don't have to have it under this process. Like I said, it's fewer steps because this doesn't actually go to the AG and EOHLC for review. I mean, it's going to get reviewed by the legislature for consistency with state law and the Constitution. So, you know, if you try to put something funky in there, you know, the legislative council is going to pick up on it too, and probably, you know, will want to talk to me about that.
Yeah, I do believe the petition to the legislature, we did have one that did get reviewed by the AG. I think they all do. That they got reviewed by the AG, but there was one where the AG struck out one provision of it because it was inconsistent with state law.
Okay. Yeah, it's not in the statute that happens, but you know, maybe if the legislature submits it to the AG for an opinion, that's out of our control. But it's not part of the process for.
Yeah, I think we submitted to the AG the same way we submitted all the other bylaw amendments from town meeting.
Okay.
Because I know it. Looking through
Yeah, I mean,
all
that's
the
not
history of the
required by
charter.
Special
Yeah.
Act. Charter
Yeah, it may not be a
process.
requirement, but I think we've submitted every one of our charter amendments, and we've done them both ways, but we've submitted them all to the AG for review.
Yeah, I mean, it's not, like I said, it's not required by this process. Whether you want to do it or not, you know, even bylaws, like when I'm working with the town on a proposed bylaw, for example, it's not uncommon for us to run things by the municipal law unit, like the unit that's eventually going to review that bylaw at the end of the process, just to see if they spot anything that we can catch before it goes to town meeting, right? We don't want to waste that whole process, pass a bylaw, have it get reviewed, and have it not be approved in the way that we wanted it to, right? So if that's the process that you follow, we can support that.
Just,
Mr. Chair.
just so I can understand, if I can understand the differences we were talking about, what you can do through the Attorney General ballot versus the special act. You said you can't touch the composition, so if we wanted to say, and I'm not recommending this, shrink the select board from 5 members to 3 members, we would have to do that through a special act. We couldn't do that through the vote.
That's correct. And it's
I just wanted to understand that.
it's the home rule charter amendment process versus the special act charter. Because remember, both of them might eventually go to the voters.
Correct.
So that's not what sets them apart. It's whether it's town meeting proposing it and then just the voters approving it, or town meeting approving it and the legislature.
So the legislature would have to approve that type of change.
Correct.
If we wanted to limit the town administrator to a 1 year at a time contract, that would also have to go to the,
Correct.
through the special act.
Right.
I just wanted to understand when you're talking about composition. And
Yep.
If we made a change one way, we cannot unchange it the other way.
Can you,
So, meaning if we made a change as a special act, we can't change it with a home rule charter amendment.
Pretty sure we
Because
can.
Well, that's what I'm asking is,
Well,
we have
assuming
several
that
times
it's-
in the past, we have done things either way.
yeah, I mean,
We
it's,
can't go back and change one back, say, with the other option. Or can we?
you can, as long as it's not restricted in that process that you're intending to use, right? So if you, for example, you increase the size of the Board of Selectmen from 3 to 5 members, right? I assume that happened at some point here, because
That's with our original charter
Right.
in '87.
like, you can't go back and change that now by home rule charter amendment. You'd have to do a special act to change that. But if you made some other form of change, like, you know, how your budget cycle works or something,
Yeah.
right? You can change that by home rule charter amendment, even if it was
Done by
approved by
special
special
act
act.
for some reason.
Yeah, I think I think the point there is that setting aside those changes that are restricted, that cannot be made by the review amendment process we would be dealing with on our committee. Setting that aside, a charter amendment made by the home rule process through town meeting, 2/3 vote at town meeting and then vote of the voters, or the special legislation, the special act, those have equal weight, you know, and they change the charter.
Oh, yeah.
And so the next time you change the charter, it doesn't, you know, if you're proposing to change something in the charter, it doesn't matter how that something got there.
Yeah, then it's there, so you're changing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right,
And-
depending on what you're trying to change.
Right, you may have, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And I've also seen towns that emerge out of this charter review process that have two different paths, right? Where there's some things that they want to change about the composition. So they do a home rule petition for those things. And the other things don't involve that, and they just do a ballot vote and get that approved by the voters. Now that's caution there, right? Because if some of the envisioned changes you had in the other parts of the charter that you're sending to the voters, you had envisioned the composition changing in relation to those, you know, you may end up with a system of government that you didn't intend. If, for example, I mean, the legislature, if town meeting approves a petition, the legislature is not going to vote down the petition, right? The most likely thing that might jinx that up would be the legislature passes it, it's got a local vote requirement, and the voters vote it down for some reason.
So what do you recommend as an attorney for the town, if we wanted to do something, and we're not gonna make any composition changes, so we can do either way, what would you recommend as a process?
I think the special act is a much smoother, easier process to use. You know, it does kind of take the timeline out of your hands a little bit because the legislature has to act. But I also think if you have a good working relationship with your local legislative delegation,
They can get it through.
things can happen. You know, and I think a lot of towns go that way. I mean, you think about if you're not going to have local voters approve it, right? It saves the costs of having to publish, you know, the changes. It saves the cost of having to conduct an election, to count. You know, there's costs that go with all of that, right?
So how do we
Wait
square?
a year before it gets before the ballot.
How do you square that though with the atmosphere that's now in town? That's no, the people have a right to vote. They should vote. How do I, as a member of this board, who then, when they come back to me and say, why did you go that way with a special act that was out of the voters' hands? Why didn't you go with the home rule petition?
Right.
Town meeting,
Well, I
the
mean,
voters,
one thing
it's
to
in
think
the
about
voters'
here.
hands,
It's
town
in the
meeting.
voters' hands.
Right. I
Goes
mean,
to town meeting.
yeah.
Yes, but town meeting is 100 people. You know what I mean? Like
But it's been town
I think
meeting,
an
so
argument can be
anybody
made.
can come to it.
I
Right.
understand, but
Right.
traditionally it's very poorly attended.
Right. That's why, I mean, I can I can tell you what the law is, but that ultimate decision is up to you. I mean,
Okay.
that's a policy question.
Gotcha.
Like, I can tell you what I think, but that's absolutely, you don't have to
I
do
was,
that.
I was just curious
Understood.
what your opinion was.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
I
thank you.
think pragmatically, from a cost standpoint, you know, because I know all towns are concerned about costs and budgets and stuff. I mean, for me, that's an important thing. You know, the smoothness of the process and the likelihood to get it in the version that you want, I think is, the special act is the way to go for that.
Just as a couple of points of interest in this, relative to this, our last batch of special act charter changes, it was 19 months from the time the first, one of those was passed by town meeting in May, and some others passed it that October the same year. This was in 2023. It was January of 2025 before those were signed into law. So that's one point. And a second point is that we have done, of all the changes that we've made to the charter since it was initially approved by the voters in May of 1987, 5 batches of changes were made with a town meeting, 2/3 town meeting vote followed by a ballot vote. 3 were made by petition to the legislatures, and those have all been since 2020. And 1, curiously enough, the very first amendment to the charter was made by the legislature on a bill filed by the governor rather than the town meeting. There was a reason for that. It's a change that had to be made before our next town meeting opportunity. So we worked with Governor Dukakis's office to get that in there. So I'm sure that comes up rarely. I think it was Andrew from your office. We were talking home rule at the last Citizen Planner Training Collaborative.
Right.
We talked a lot about then. You know, he said, "I've never heard of that," but yeah, we've seen it.
Yeah, the governor can always file bills.
Yes, so
So
we wouldn't, right? We
last
wouldn't.
resort, if you needed something changed quickly, like that's
Yeah.
an avenue.
And then just one other point. I think it was November of 2020. We had 2 charter changes at a town meeting. One of them was a legislative petition for a special act. The other was submitted to the voters. So we did it both ways in one town meeting once.
Yes, and I have seen that. I think it's, you know, to me, it's, if you can completely segregate the two so that you know that the success or failure of one or the other isn't going to impact the rest of it, it's perfectly fine to take that approach.
Yep.
But you don't have to. Like, unless you're trying to change composite, you know, if you're trying to do one of those restricted things, you know, you've got to do a special act for those changes. So just keep that in mind.
So we don't have to decide that for quite some time, right? We can decide that after we do all of our charter changes if we don't touch composition. We can decide what process we want to move forward.
Absolutely. Until you're at the point where, you know, an article is getting drafted for the warrant, it's completely, you know, up in the air in terms of what process you need to use.
And we can also decide how we split up, whether we do it as a single article, which requires a single vote, or if we split it up, like when we did the bylaw, we had 41 sections, so we had 41 warrant articles in a consent agenda, so we only had
I think
to
in
vote
this case,
twice.
I think in this case, it depends on what changes we make. If we
Yep.
make one change, then you get one or 2 changes, then you might want to split it up. If we're going to make significant changes throughout the charter, you may want to have an up and down vote on the entire thing.
Yeah,
Yeah, for the
I
very
think-
same coordination issues
Yeah.
you're talking about is if people start hunting, pecking, and changing their mind halfway through, then, okay, well, now we've changed this, but that had an unintended effect of changing something else that we didn't envision or something like that during the town meeting.
Exactly.
Then what do you do?
Yeah, so I think it's you have to carefully craft, like if you're gonna have, you know, different articles for different changes, I think you've got to be careful about how you package those, right? You don't want to create inconsistencies because one thing gets voted down, the other doesn't. You know, so if you're gonna change, for example, your budgetary process, like dates or something like that, like I would put that all in one, all the amendments that are to do with that, put them all in one article. But, you know, that's, you know, it's just something you'll figure out, I think, as you go forward.
And I think I want to go back to Dan's point for a moment. If a charter change that we want to propose, if that is something that we determine that this is something that really should be voted on by all the voters, then, you know, and we could say that most of the changes we're asking for or proposing aren't of such significance that we need the voters to vote on them. You know, we could just hypothetically, we could root all those through the special act process. If we had one change that we felt really needed to have the approval of the voters, we could arrange for it to be done that way. Because you don't have to do all of them, you just said, I think we don't have to do all of them the same way. We can kind of,
Correct.
yeah, we want to make sure that we don't split them up in a way that would produce a conflict if one of them failed.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and I think generally, if the special act amendment is gonna affect one of those restricted areas, you're probably gonna wanna have a local vote on it. You know, I think that's just, you know, from your point, like for transparency and voter input, I mean, you're essentially changing something fundamental about your government, right? So if, for example, some towns would change from a open town meeting to a representative town meeting, you can do that through the special act process, but you probably want to have that accepted by the voters once the legislature passes it. That's an example.
Yes, and one thing you really haven't talked about yet is amending the charter via an elected charter commission, which is how we created the initial charter.
Right, it's not really important to your work.
Yeah.
But the other type of charter process that comes up is that there is a process in the Home Rule Act where a elected charter commission can be formed, and that charter commission basically has, it's a similar process to both, right? They have the ability to propose whatever they want. You know, my town, I'm from Framingham, and a charter commission was used to change it from a town to a city. Okay, that's the type of reason why you have a charter commission, or if there's like, you know, you want to basically rewrite the whole charter. You know, you could adopt a new charter. You don't have to amend what you have. You know, if you want to change, you know, from a town meeting to town council, you know, like Franklin has a town council, right? It's like essentially like a city council, but it has the function of like a town meeting too. So, you know, there's different things you can play with. It's home rule, so it's kind of the, you know, the experiment, the democratic experiment, right? You can come up with whatever works for Grafton. So, but that's not what you are.
That's not what we are. Yeah, absolutely right.
And those charters also get reviewed by the AG and EOHLC before they're finalized, you know, and they go to the voters. You know, so Framingham's charter, for example, 2018, or the vote was 2017, it passed by about 100 votes. You know, and then once that charter passed, there's, you know, if you're doing something fundamental like that, there's usually like a transition period that happens when you still have the existing government, and then there's a new government that takes office. So, I mean, don't think that's what you're you're looking towards. So,
Andy, you're not gonna be the mayor at the end of this one.
Oh, come on.
No,
Add 'em out.
mayor for life.
yeah, and I think the difference, another difference between charter commissioners and your charter review committee members is that charter commission members are actually specifically exempted from the conflict of interest law. They're not municipal employees.
Yeah,
So,
they're completely exempt from the conflict of interest.
same thing as like town meeting members. You know, they're
Yeah.
they're not considered municipal employees for
Yeah.
the conflict of
If I
interest.
remember right, those are the two municipal exemptions from the conflict of interest law. You know, anything else, Chris?
Yeah, so so at the end of the day, like, what can you do? right? I would say you can do anything. You can recommend anything, right? You're recommending changes to the charter that town meeting's gonna act on. You can make whatever recommendations you want, okay? It's just depending on what those recommendations are, there might be a different process that has to get followed. So if you take it, that's what you take away from this, like that's what you have to understand, right? There's certain things that if you're gonna change them, will need to get adopted by special act. And other things that you don't need to go that way, that you can do the, you know, basically what I'd call just the town process, right? Town meeting's gonna vote on it, and then it's gonna go to the voters.
And I think, as you pointed out, Mark, that we don't, I think once we have a set of recommendations that we're pretty comfortable with, we can then decide how we want each of those to be handled via the town meeting, and, you know, do we go the special act route, or do we go the local vote, the local route?
I agree.
Until we know what we're gonna be recommending.
That's why I asked. That's why we don't have to make the decision now.
Yeah. But it's good for us to keep in mind, to know what the, and that's why I asked Chris to speak to that, is that I think it's good for us to be aware of what the processes are.
Right. The other thing that commonly comes up, you know, when you're doing a charter review is what should be in the charter and what shouldn't be in the charter. And go back to what I started off with. Your charter is your constitution, right? Just like you have bylaws, which are like state statutes at the state level, right? Or then boards might have regulations or policies. Those are like regulations at the state level, at the federal level, right? Those different types of laws, they're all laws. They all do different things, right? Your constitution usually sets forward how your government's going to be organized and some basic things about how it's going to operate. Like it might organize the town into different departments, for example. It might provide for a certain fiscal cycle, like how the budget process works. It might provide some basic things about the function of town meeting, like when the town meeting is going to be, how many, if you have a quorum, they usually say set the quorum by bylaw because it's easier to change, but some charters have quorum in there too. But it's kind of those basic things that you would, you think about the Constitution of the United States, you think about the Commonwealth's Constitution, you're going to have those types of things about the function and organization of the government. You're not going to have like, shovel your sidewalk if it snows. That's a bylaw. Okay, so you're going to get lots of suggestions from the community, I'm sure, as you go through to get the public input, and just, kind of keep those buckets in mind. Just because you get an idea from the public that isn't right for the charter doesn't mean you can't bring it forward somewhere in your final report. When we did our charter review committee in Framingham, for example, we said we heard input from the public that they wanted an ordinance that would do this. We had no ability to, we're just making a recommendation, right? So we actually nothing we do necessarily is gonna get done, but you still have that ability to make recommendations on other things. So when people ask, what can we do, you can propose amendments to the charter and you can share, public input about other things that you've got. And, if a board that has the ability to act on something at town meeting or in a regulation or whatever wants to move forward with that type of stuff that you got from the public input, they can do that. So I would just keep that in mind. You're trying to figure out what goes in your bucket and then what else you get and what you do with that is really up to you. What else can I talk about?
I have a question, if you just give us some advice on the specificity of certain things, and I have an example here. When it talks about the composition of the housing authority, it talks about how it has 5 members, 3 of which shall be elected by voters, 2 of which shall be appointed in the manner provided by the general laws. So could you give us an idea of when we should be specific? Because I know exactly how those 2 members are appointed and what the specificity is. but could you give us just some guidance on when we should be specific in the charter and when we should just refer to general law?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's when you're trying to vary something, you know, you want to be very specific about that. You know, if you're just trying to parrot general law or you want to rely upon the general law, that's exactly what you do. I mean, you know, I hate to give you the lawyer answer, but it depends, right?
Because I'm just thinking about, and this isn't the purpose of the charter, as you mentioned, is like clarity when reading it. Because if you wanted to know how, in this example, how those two members are appointed, you'd then have to find the general law. But again, the purpose of the charter isn't necessarily to read, it's to govern.
Right, and I think that's a common tension you have when you're reviewing a charter. It's like, how can we make this easier for the public to understand? Yeah, I like I said, I've been in your shoes. I just did it in Framingham, so I can really appreciate that.
Yeah, one of the things you have to watch in not being super specific with that is if the general laws change.
Right.
And you put in, say, Mass General Law, Chapter 138D, Section 12, and the legislature in its infinite wisdom takes and changes the numbering system or puts it somewhere else.
Yes, that can happen.
Yeah.
You know,
It's,
think about everybody that might have had the open meeting law site in
yes,
their charter. The open meeting law, the site completely changed like 16, 17 years ago.
yes. I remember running across that in our bylaw review a few years ago, that the open meeting law moved from one chapter of the general laws to another. You know, in the case that Jack mentioned, housing authorities are currently governed by Chapter 121B of the general laws. Once upon a time, they were governed by a different chapter, and that was a way. I noticed somewhere along the line that it changed in some other research I was doing. I couldn't tell you what the chapter used to be.
Yeah, and the manner of electing the members
Yeah.
in the general laws changed too.
Yes,
And not every town picked up on that,
yeah.
which led to some issues.
One thing, not to diverge too much into this particular topic, but it's one thing we noticed on the bylaw review committee, that you know, we in what the bylaw review committee proposed to town meeting, we included a small number of charter changes. One of them was to align with the state law update to that.
Right, exactly. So that's, I mean, you know, just because the bylaw review committee is reviewing the bylaws doesn't mean they can't make some suggestions. And now that you guys are doing the charter review, you can take those and say, well, here's some ideas that the bylaw review committee had. Like, what do you want to do those or not? I mean,
Yeah.
that's still up to you, but, you know, so there's some work that maybe is already done.
So I think you can answer this. If we are going to refer to the Mass General laws, we should just state in the manner provided by general law, or however we're wording it, rather than being specific to which law it is.
I think that's probably the best thing to do. You know, keep in mind this is intended to be a document that's not easy to change, right? But you want to have some flexibility because we're not in a static society. Laws change, you know, and you don't want to have things worded so specifically where your charter comes into conflict with state law. Because in that instance, I mean, once your charter comes into conflict with state law supersedes your charter.
Yeah, I think closely related to this was a situation that we ran into a few years ago. We enacted a charter change that changed the method of appointment of the finance committee. It was appointed by the moderator only. We changed it to be appointed by a committee of three. And in the charter change that implemented that, we named the three positions specifically. A year or two later, we updated the charter to delegate the composition of that committee to bylaw. Again, that's with the that's kind of goes along with the idea of don't make the charter more specific than it needs to be. So
Right.
we fixed that by And I think that was entirely appropriate to delegate to bylaw the details.
Especially since we had also put it in the bylaw. Fortunately, they were consistent.
Yeah, and I think there are other communities that do that too, where they'll put just wholesale pieces of the charter into the bylaws. That's all well and good, but just keep in mind, if you amend the bylaw, it doesn't really matter if it's the
Yep.
charter.
Yep.
Right?
Again,
So you want to have some sort of, like usually like, I don't think you guys are on E-code, but like E-code will have a cross-reference to the charter, and this is taken from the charter. So if you don't use E-code, I would, if you put charter provisions in your bylaws, I would footnote, this is the charter. You know, so there's no confusion that town meeting doesn't think it can amend those types of things without following a charter amendment process.
that touches on another thing we did is the 4 of the 5 bylaw review committee members are here on this committee too, but one of the things we did was we went through the bylaws and tried to eliminate redundancies between the charter and the bylaw. If the charter says it, we don't need the bylaw to say it. I think we did a pretty good job of taking care of it, but it's always something to keep in mind, and works the other way too. In whatever we propose for the charter, we might propose something in the charter that will require a change in the bylaw,
Correct.
and but we need to kind of pay attention to that, but sort of keep them as separate as possible.
Right. But also so just like the Constitution supersedes statutes and statutes supersede regulations, so your charter supersedes conflicting bylaws. Okay, and bylaws would supersede conflicting regulations. So as you propose the changes, yeah, just be sure you know about if that's creating any types of internal conflict in your legal, your laws, your draft.
Any other questions on this topic?
I don't know if I have a question, but a comment. It feels like there's something that needs to connect back to the people, because as I'm listening, and I've had some experience with this, with bylaws and the charter, and one was different and something was in the middle of being changed. People need somewhere to go. I'm trying to think through that process, and it may be just something that points to people to where to go as they're reading something. If anything changes, just like who's their point of contact, who would always have the latest piece of information. I don't think I'm articulating it well, but it sounds like it's a high-level document. So if I go as a regular citizen to read it, I don't understand something, or it says go to the general law. Who do I reach out to from that point? You know, so there's just something connecting it back to practical use for the people as needed. That's floating around for me.
Yeah, that's probably something for us to keep in mind, which may not touch directly on the content of the charter itself, but it does suggest a need for some sort of a document or some source of information that may not be the official charter or the official bylaws, but some kind of reference material that can kind of connect them. I think, Chris mentioned E-code, which is something I understand we are working on, and to the extent that that can provide some cross-references, particularly cross-references between charter and bylaws, and maybe an index of topics or something like that, that's it. If nothing else, that could end up being a recommendation from this committee for some action to be taken in addition to the charter revisions, a recommendation for some other work that could be done to facilitate reading and comprehension. Again, a bit of it goes back to the point that Jack raised about to take that example as something as specified in the general laws. Well, what general? How do I find the general law that regulates the housing authority. So it's good to be not overly specific in the charter referencing a general law, but it would be, it's helpful for people to have, to have the ability to find what that general law is.
Especially in that specific instance, because it's actually referencing two separate general laws in that answer. I think, obviously Mike raises a great point, and I think for the purposes of right now, people can reach out here at these meetings. I don't know if we had, I'm sure we had, we don't have public comment on here, but if you have a question, you know, we are available at the same time every month, conceivably. So for now, that can be the answer, and then we can continue to develop it as we go further.
Correspondence to the website.
Yep.
And I just have a question about this phrase that's been used, is it E-code? What exactly is that? Okay.
It's a company that organizes your bylaws for you.
Okay.
You post it on your website. It's pretty good.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
You're basically,
Great.
you're putting them online in a way that's more easily searchable
Okay.
and linkable.
Great. Okay.
We have an activity in process to do that.
I'm glad to see that. It's a
We're not-
good product. It's a good,
We haven't finished it yet,
website.
but
This
it's
was
on the
really
way.
helpful. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you very much.
Do you have
And-
any other questions?
Any other questions, Skip?
I do. I have one. In our current charter, knowing the people that put it together, I envision, they talk about an administrative code, that the town administrator is to set before the selectmen when he wants to make a change from the organization of the town at the time the charter was passed, to then go to town meeting to be approved. It's either thumbs up or thumbs down. So, for example, say there was, we have 7 cemeteries in town. They were run by 3 separate cemetery commissions, and they were all run differently. Taking and making them all work with one cemetery commission and have, instead of 3 cemetery superintendents, having one, changing it to a working foreman, and then having them all report up through a town Department of Public Works. Our records show that there was a hearing before the selectmen, which I would kind of contest based on their minutes. And it went to town meeting, and it said, we're adopting the administrative code posted at the town clerk's office for everybody to read this administrative code. When they created the Department of Public Works out of the highway department, the cemetery department, the parks department, whoever was taking care of all those, to put them under one group instead of having everybody else doing their own thing. That got voted at the town meeting. We have not been able to find it in print anywhere. So that's our first crack at the administrative code that's an appendix to our charter. That was a change from the way our town did it, those functions. And we've added to it over time. At times we have, like, we never had a deputy chief of police. And there's some other changes or nuances that have happened that there are things that are, kind of like codified someplace as you flush things out. But should that even be in the charter? That administrative code there's a process laid out to adopt it, and for the town meeting, for the selectmen to say yes or no, and then for it to go to town meeting, and it becomes an appendix to the charter. But does that really belong there?
I mean, I think the charters typically will have how the government's organized when you first pass the charter, right? And they'll have a procedure by which, in Grafton, the town administrator can submit a reorganization plan, right? To either form a new department, consolidate, eliminate, whatever it is they're proposing. And there's a process on how that plan gets approved or not. the plan itself doesn't necessarily have to be part of the charter. You know, it
Yeah.
could be,
Ours says it's an appendix to it, but like in this case,
but it's,
we gotta
Yeah.
try and find it, but
right, and the problem with saying it's an appendix to the charter is that you don't have to amend the charter to change that. So
Okay.
it's problematic, I think, to call it an appendix to the charter when it's not part of the charter, because if it was part of the charter, you'd have to follow the charter,
Charter
the whole little
change it.
charter amendment procedure to change that, and you don't. I mean, you have like a procedure to do that.
yeah, and in that section of the charter, it's very charter change-like, where it has to go to the selectmen for approval, then it has to go to the town meeting for approval,
Yeah,
before
well,
it
that's
becomes
pretty common.
enacted. And I'm sorry, I'm saying selectmen because being involved in town politics since 1977, for the vast majority of my time,
Yeah.
that's what they've been.
So it just says, for the convenience of the public, the administrative code shall be printed as an appendix to, but not an integral part of the bylaws.
Bylaws.
We just saw that, yeah.
Yeah, which is,
Yeah.
that makes sense. That's where
Yeah.
I would put it.
So
Can we take it out?
he does it under the charter, but it's an appendix to the bylaws.
Yeah,
The
the
procedure to
the
change
modification
it is under the
process
charter.
is in the charter.
But it's not a charter change. You
That makes sense.
understand?
Oh, yeah.
Any other charter questions?
One second.
This was very helpful.
I think
Yeah.
one non-charter but town council question may come up. We touched on it a little bit at our last meeting. It's an open meeting law question about, specifically the question had to do with, suppose in between meetings, a member comes up with a proposal for a charter change, say a draft charter change. One would like to be able to communicate that to the members of the committee prior to the meeting, so that when we are in the meeting, we can and deliberate upon it, we've already had a chance to review that. Arguably, that could constitute if we emailed that proposal out to everybody prior to the meeting, arguably under the meeting law, that could constitute a deliberation, even if no one responds to it.
Correct.
Just the fact of communicating a member's opinion to the committee prior to the meeting, that it's probably an open meeting law violation.
No, it's definitely an open meeting law violation. I can
it's
speak from
Mark ran into that in his other town.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the problem is that a proposed amendment is essentially, that's stating the opinion of that person that's coming up with that proposal. And whenever an opinion of one of your members is expressed by either email, text, posting it to like a Google document, which is very popular, but would advise staying away from as a public body. Anytime that's communicated to a quorum of this body, whether that happens in one email or whether, you know, it goes serially, you know, like the soup can game, right? That is a deliberation under the OML. And a deliberation can only occur at a properly noticed meeting that's open to the public.
Yeah, that's
So I had a,
counterproductive, but
would it be valid for a subcommittee to have a properly posted meeting in public to discuss the amendment, and then once the amendment has been discussed in public, it could then be shared with the rest of the committee for deliberation at the next meeting?
Right, and so the subcommittee basically adopts a recommendation that they're gonna bring forth to
Yep.
the committee. Then that recommendation could be distributed with the background material for the meeting.
Okay, because that's essentially the
That's
school,
the way to do it.
that's essentially the school committee policy subcommittee.
I like that. Oh, I didn't know you could do that. That's good. You
Yeah.
could do
Yeah.
that. All right. Because you're right, because getting something for the first time, you gotta wait till the next meeting before you can talk about it, because it's the first time you see it. You you really can't make a decision, or you could discuss it, I guess, but you need another meeting.
So related to that is, let's say we have a proposal from one member. We distribute the proposal at the meeting, discuss it at the meeting. As a document that was discussed at the meeting, can we then circulate electronic copies of that to members after the meeting? Basically, the results of the deliberation.
Yes, I think that's permissible.
Mike
Pardon my
has his hand
ignorance.
up.
I have a question. I have a question about quorum because I hear subcommittees and I hear quorum sounds like the challenge. So what's the number? If we had a subcommittee that only spoke to each other, that is below quorum for this bigger committee.
If we establish a subcommittee, it's a committee.
Yeah, and any subcommittees are also subject to the OML, so it doesn't, any group of 2 or more people.
Yep.
Okay, because we use the word quorum, so I wanted to get an operational definition for what is our quorum. But 2 or more is the challenge.
Right. So say we have a subcommittee of 3, which is arguably the smallest subcommittee you can have, since you should have an odd number of members. Let's say you have a subcommittee of 3. A quorum of that subcommittee is any 2 members.
Right.
Which has nothing to do with the quorum of this committee as a whole. The Charter Review Committee has 15 members. A quorum is 8.
But if we establish a subcommittee of whatever number, that still has to be posted under the open
Yes.
meeting law.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, a subcommittee is
I think
subject.
that's what Mike was asking.
Yeah, a subcommittee is
Yeah, I
subject
was-
to the open meeting law, but the quorum for a subcommittee has nothing to do with the quorum for this body.
Yeah, my point was working off of the larger quorum, not knowing the information that I know now, and seeing, hey, if there was, in this case where we were using the number 3, if that little group got together and only spoke to each other and then came back to the larger meeting and shared information, because I'm just thinking about how you divide and get work done. Would that be permissible? If our subcommittee of 3, we would still have to post and we'd have to have our meetings live and everyone could be a part of it?
Yes.
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 Yeah,
Okay.
the
Okay.
subcommittee's
Thank you.
subject to the OML too. I mean, the only
Thank you.
way you could, accomplish something without having to meet and discuss it publicly would be if you assigned something to an individual person and then they had to bring it back, at the next committee meeting.
Thank you.
Yep. All right.
So if you did that, so say I decided I was gonna take section 5 of the charter and come back and circulate my kind of report back to the committee with my suggested changes with a packet of information about why I suggest them, for people to look at and save the time at the next meeting. You can't do that, but you can do that in the committee form?
Right, because the committee, that was a public deliberation,
Supposed to be
basically what came out of their committee.
Makes sense.
It's different.
It's a posted meeting, the subcommittee
Well,
looking
right.
at it. So if you and Skip, you and Bob were a committee looking at section 5, we come up with a proposal, that can go to the chair and it can go out in the next packet, because it was done in public.
Right, but I couldn't have a meeting, I couldn't post a meeting for myself and then
No.
have it, and then sit there and talk to myself.
No, so
I
if,
can't do that, but
But
if
if
I
you-
came up with the idea
you'd have
and
to bring it to the meeting.
paperwork,
You'd have to bring it to
then
the
bring
meeting.
it to the
Absolutely
meeting,
should do
Nobody
that.
can look at it until the meeting.
I was gonna say, we should think about adding a skip committee.
Oh, my God.
Let's just
I
post
think
that
we should
permanently.
skip that.
This just,
Um,
All right, any other questions for
Yes.
council here?
So there was a recent question about results of votes when large numbers of people abstain. So it was determined that I found differing opinions over whether the passing something requires a majority of those present or a majority of those present and voting. There is a description of majority vote in the charter of present and voting, but it seems very limited in its applicability. Would it be sufficient to us under our multiple member body procedures section of the charter to reference that definition and say something like all votes shall be by majority vote as defined in whatever section. Unless there's a conflict, unless specified otherwise in some other law or something. Is that something that would be sensible?
I would be very careful with that, because I
Okay.
think that definition that's in the charter right now is creating some
Problems.
interpretive dilemmas. I will
So
say
if the
Interpretive
definition were to be updated to eliminate those problems, or is it better to just not touch it and let state law leave it alone?
I think that the charter, you probably want to look at that, at changing that. And there's probably a lot of ideas that I have that I can give you.
I think we should ask council for a recommendation on how to clean up that section,
Mhm.
because that is an important section that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
So do we need to make a motion to ask town council to give us a proposal? Because if we do, I'll make that motion right now.
Is it sufficient for me to take that as a consensus of the committee?
Unless somebody objects.
Without objection, consider yourself asked.
Well, yeah, and keep in mind, like, I can recommend ways to change it, but there's more than one option. So, without knowing like what you want, it's kind of hard for me to tell you what I think you should do.
I don't ever want to hear about a meeting in which 2 members vote in favor of something and 3 members abstain and we don't know the outcome of the vote. Use that as the guide to give us a proposal.
Yes.
Is that
And
fair? Is that fair?
we could certainly discuss which result we want out of that. We just want to know how to codify that result.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, and if there are,
Well, I think how you define president voting, or how you define majority vote, determines what that result of that vote is.
Yeah, I just want to know, how do we make that effective where it's not, it's effective in very limited sense because of how it's worded. So,
Right, and I think in the particular example that maybe you're talking about, the requirement for the majority vote was by general law. Like, you can't change the definition of majority vote in general laws through your charter.
Yeah.
You can change it to applications in the charter and the bylaws,
Yeah.
but in that particular example, it didn't change what the meaning of majority vote was in the general law.
right, a definition of majority vote in the charter, whatever we end up with, is always going to be qualified by saying, unless otherwise specified by the general laws or by statute or some equivalent language.
Right.
another kind of similar one was, there is language in the charter about bodies being able to make their own rules and procedures. Is it generally something done to define a default for like a parliamentary procedure reference if boards haven't specified their own,
Yeah,
such
you-
as Robert's
see,
rules, the relaxed, or something else?
I don't know if Robert's rules would be my default, but
Yeah.
I mean, you can certainly you can provide for some uniform rules of procedure, like in your charter. I know in Framingham, it does include that, but you can also leave the board some flexibility too, because, it's going to be really hard to come up with like a one-size-fits-all approach, because different boards in town have different functions, and you want to be careful about that.
Anything else? If not, just remind everybody that we will likely be calling on council from time to time with additional questions. Anytime questions come up during our deliberations. Ultimately, when we have some fairly concrete proposals, I think we will want to have council review those. And again, drawing on recent experience with the bylaw committee, 41 bylaw articles, we asked town council at the time to review every one of them, and she did.
Okay,
Provided useful feedback.
One final question related to open meeting law. At our last meeting, we attempted to open the meeting. We had technical issues. That fact was recorded in the minutes. We eventually opened like almost 20 minutes late. Is that something that would need to be recorded in the minutes, or can we just say it was opened at this time and we don't need to mention any of the issues that happened that would cause it to be late?
So you had members that were attending remotely?
Yes, and there was a technical issue where we couldn't hear each other.
Right, I do think you need to have that in the minutes.
It does have to be in the minutes.
Yeah.
I might.
Greg and I were having a discussion.
It might clean it up some, but
If you were all meeting in person and you were just live streaming, for the public, I think it's different. But the idea of the meeting is that everybody that's attending, that's a member, should be able to hear and speak to each other, right? And I think if you have an issue with that, like that should be noted in your minutes.
Interesting.
okay. That's all.
Anything else? Well,
Glad you asked.
thank you very much, Chris, for taking the time to meet with us. I think,
Yeah, thanks for having me out, and I wish you the best of luck. Like I said, I've been through this process, so any other questions you have, please send them my way. I'm happy to share my experiences with y'all, because it was a fun ride. But I was very relieved when it was done, so, as I'm sure you will all be. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd say feel free to stay if you want to, but I rather suspect you would be really interested in getting home.
This is my third night meeting of the week, so I'm tapped out. Thanks.
Excellent. All right, so the next item on my agenda here is outreach. We discussed it sort of briefly and abstractly at the last meeting, but I think we our intention has been from the beginning to reach out to the public, reach out to town boards and committees and departments and officers, soliciting feedback. What would you like to see in the changed in the charter? So the question is, how do we want to reach out? Not so much how, but what do we want to ask? Should the ask be as simple as, give us your suggestions for charter changes, or do we want to be more detailed in the ask?
I think the best thing to do is a three-step process. I think we should reach out to all boards and committees with a memo saying we're in the process of amending the charter. Do you have any recommendations you'd like us to consider? So all the boards and committees should really be contacted.
Yes.
I think we should also set up on the website a way for people to submit proposed charter changes outside of our meeting so that we can get them and talk about it. And then the third way, I think, is we should have a public hearing, at least one public hearing at the beginning and at the end of the process to receive public input as well. So I think it has to be three ways. We definitely should reach out to all the boards and committees.
Yeah, that's like at the top of my list.
Yeah, I think we need to do that. And setting up a way for people, either an email address or something, charter review at Grafton whatever you call it, so that people can submit proposed charter changes to us and we can debate those at each meeting, talk about them. And then we definitely should have a public hearing of some kind. I think those are the three ways for the public outreach.
I think the question was more of, in that first method, how do we want to phrase the question to the boards and to the agencies?
We're in the process of amending the charter, or reviewing the charter. Do you have any proposed changes? Period.
Yeah.
It has to be too specific.
Yeah.
My question was kind of that's sort of the obvious way to phrase it. Do we want to be more specific? And I can't think of a reason to be more specific.
I think in the last one, for the bylaw, there were certain agencies that were responsible for certain sections of the bylaws. So we sent them a different letter saying, we think you are responsible for this section of the bylaw. Please provide us your feedback on this particular section. I don't think there is as much of that.
Right.
With the charter.
Yeah. When I was reviewing what we did for the bylaw, the same thought is in my mind, that that we don't need to be, there's nothing really agency-specific in much of the charter. It's just a more general question. Because also, partly because the bylaw is touched more closely on various agencies' responsibilities, so you would expect them to have more to say about it. But yeah, keep it simple.
Yeah, this is big government, nothing specific about anybody, so just, what we did before, and cross out charter, bylaws and put in charter.
Pretty much. I can have Amber send that out like tomorrow.
Yeah, we should get that out as soon as possible.
And
Yeah, she's going to New York, remember, Dave?
that's right. I heard her say she was going to be in New York tomorrow. Well, okay. And Monday's out too. Monday's kind of a holiday or something.
When she can get it out. she
Well,
can get it.
yes. As soon as practicable, we'll have Amber get that out to basically all the town departments, boards, and committees. Outreach to the public. You mentioned having something on our website of sort of setting up something that
Do we
there's
wanna-
we have a general contact form, but we might want to have something more specific set up for suggestions.
Do we want to put something, out, what we did in Groton is we did a couple of things. We put something out on our Facebook page, and we said the Charter Review Committee's meeting, if you have any suggestions, please submit them, and we gave an email address for them to submit the recommendations. So maybe we want to do something on Facebook. Do we have a local newspaper?
Yeah,
Okay.
kinda.
Maybe we want to, I'm just asking, maybe we want to put an ad in the paper as well, because some people do get their news that way, saying the same message. We're accepting, recommendations.
Yep. One of the things that the last Charter Review Committee, Amber had a copy of it when I was talking with her, they actually put out a survey. And I don't remember, it was like 3 questions in the survey. I glanced at it. The only one I remember is, and this is clearly not applicable to our work this time around, was, would you be in favor of a representative town meeting? But I think whatever questions of that nature that might come up out of our work is more likely to arise out of some of the suggestions that we make. So I think our first outreach is simply
Ideas.
and particularly
Bring it
particularly for the public, but I would probably include this in the email to all the departments, et cetera, is here's what the charter is. Here's where you can go to find out more about it, because a lot of people reading that may not be particularly familiar with the charter. So you want to basically give them enough so they can see, well, this is what the charter is, and then do you have any suggestions? Nothing more complicated than that at the outset. And following up on what you mentioned about having a public hearing, again, reflecting on the work the bylaw committee did, we basically had 2 public meetings, one fairly early in the process to solicit input, one later on in the process to review the proposed changes. So, and that's kind of,
Do we want to do the public hearing at our next meeting in March?
we could do that.
Yeah, we could do it at the start. One of the other things we did before though was as we developed wording that we were gonna use for proposed bylaw changes, we posted them.
Yeah, I want to get back to that in just a moment. Angela has her hand up on Zoom.
Oh,
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I'm looking at the agenda. So are we saying that would we be doing a public survey, or we're saying as the survey, we would just ask for public comment and kind of leave it general? Is that what
That's
we're
what
saying
I'm-
versus a?
that's
Right,
what
Okay.
I think we've all kind of agreed that now is not time for something that really resembles a survey. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? We might get there at some point if we have some charter changes or some proposed charter changes that we think we'd like to get the public's opinion on, specifically these. We could do a survey, but yeah, I'd have to, I think, agree with what everybody else is pretty much thinking that.
I think my only point I was thinking of there was I had Mike's voice in my head too, and being like a newer resident was just thinking it may be intimidating, I think, sometimes for people that aren't familiar with the charter to just sort of implement, like offer up a solution without any sort of maybe rubric, or just sort of, I guess to your point of like not needing specific survey questions, but giving them just sort of general like education in terms of which areas to look at, or something like that. I don't know. I think as someone who hasn't seen it, if someone is looking at this for the first time without sort of like knowing where to even kind of go, that's my only piece that I was thinking.
I think that's why my thinking is, particularly on the survey, particularly on the public outreach, is to include enough information in there about what the charter is and what it isn't. Enough information so that if you have no idea what the charter is, you know, we'll give you enough information so that you can go dig in a little bit, and you can figure out, you know, you can get a sense at least of what the charter is.
Okay.
Mike.
I was gonna say, for that process, will we be able to see the messaging? I'm just thinking about in terms of a layperson, and just making sure that it's friendly to them, because what the picture that's being painted in my picture, and what I'm learning even from tonight, is really holding up what do people already know and saying this is our Constitution, like comparing it to things that people already know, so then that way it's not as intimidating, even though we tell them what it is. Looking at I think about 31 pages and not really being clear. So just, I don't know if we'll have a chance to look at, and now I'm thinking open law, but who gets to look at the messaging? Who has the marketing chops to look at the messaging to make sure that it can actually resonate with the people that it's going to?
Okay.
That's kind of the question.
That's a good question, because if nothing else, we could bring that, you know, we could bring that messaging, the proposed messaging, to our next meeting, and have, you know, have the committee basically review that and work on it enough to where we think we're happy with what we're going to send out.
That's the messaging to the public, but we can reach out to the boards and committees now. Hopefully they know what a charter is.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I'd imagine. Yeah.
Yeah, but yes, if you know, if the committee would like to be able to review and comment on and revise proposed messaging to the public at our very next meeting, yeah, I think that.
I think Angela and Mike raised good points.
Yeah.
And unless anybody objects, I think we'll plan on that.
And I do want to just speak for a moment on the good points they just made. I think that the community outreach should be two-phased. First one should be, what do you guys think with the inclusion? The website right now actually has some pretty good information, including a summary of recent charter histories. So if we give those examples, these are some of the things that we have changed in the charter. These are some of the things we try to change but failed. Now knowing these examples, what changes do you think we should make? And then the second phase saying, here are the list of things the board has come up with so far in this cycle. Seeing that list, what else do you think? Because that would be even more, and we could even at that point ask, like you were saying, Dave, which of these already suggested amendments do you support? You can gather more information that way.
That's a good point. I like that.
And then I also want to say, Angela, saying that people might be intimidated. That is a good reason to include information, but also there will be a lot of people who will be suggesting changes, not knowing what it is. So that is also very good to use because of, like the town council said, we can get recommendations that we might not be able to do anything with, but they could still be useful pieces.
Yep. Kind of connected to that, again, going back to our bylaw committee, not all of the suggestions the bylaw committee received from the public were included in the bylaw update. You know, we had several suggestions, which in the bylaw committee's final report, we said, you know, here's some suggestions we got. We didn't act on them, and here's why we didn't act on them. And so, yeah, it's perfectly plausible that particularly with the charter and just the nature of the charter, we may very well get suggestions that are really more appropriately handled bylaw revisions or as policies, select board policies, whatever. So yeah, we'll take all suggestions and we'll consider all suggestions. We won't necessarily act on all of them, but yes, I think more than one, certainly more than one. Our initial public outreach is simply to solicit suggestions. Another outreach would be, here's what we've got so far. What do you think of that? Do you have any other ideas? And kind of take it from there. Greg?
So just for those that didn't follow that committee, an example of a suggestion that we received multiple times from the public, and we decided not to pursue it at the time, was a noise ordinance. It wasn't that we felt it wasn't appropriate or something. We felt that we couldn't do it justice, that needed more involved review and more stakeholders than we were able to do in our given time frame. So we put that forward as something that someone else in the town might want to do at some point in the future.
All righty, so.
I just have a question. Is 1 month enough time to set up that public meeting if we're thinking of putting ads in local papers, or just throwing that out there as a concern for those of you who have done that before?
Yeah, I think generally speaking, one month is sufficient lead time for a
Usually
meeting.
you have to advertise 2 weeks before a public hearing.
Okay,
And it's
okay.
also part of the ongoing outreach, so
Mhm.
it's one component of
Okay.
multiple different.
So I think at the moment, it sounds like what we're looking towards is probably at our next meeting, we will review and
What our
approve
outreach is gonna be, so we're not gonna do it next month.
the public outreach message. And it will be the following meeting at the earliest where we'll hold a public meeting or the public hearing.
Yeah, I
Doesn't have
think
to-
calling it a public hearing probably, it raises a different thought. It's just a public meeting.
It's a
public
yeah, it's a
hearing,
public
but-
meeting.
I wanted to
Yeah.
do an advertised public
Oh, yeah,
hearing.
Yeah, we'll advertise it.
Yeah.
Whether we call it a hearing or a
Wired.
meeting is,
Yeah.
I wanna call it a public hearing. I think we should hold a public hearing, because there's some, what's what I'm looking for? Not importance, but it puts a little bit more weight. Thank you.
Yeah.
But it puts more weight to the process if you call it a public hearing, you advertise it, you open the public hearing, you take input, you close the public hearing. It just, you know, David, on the planning board, when you do a
Yeah.
public hearing, it has more significance than a regular meeting. And I think that's what we need to do with this.
although
It's
some,
an invitation.
Huh?
It's like an invitation.
Yeah.
It's not just
Yeah.
a public meeting, people can come, so we're asking you to come.
yes, some of the planning board hearings are technically public meetings and not hearings. I mean, it's 6 of one, and a half
I know what
of the
you're
other, in terms of the procedures involved.
So when you're doing a site plan review, you do a public hearing on
Yeah.
the site plan, right?
No, I think maybe a site plan is technically called,
Right,
in the
so-
zoning
oh,
bylaws,
sorry,
it's
special
called a
permit.
public meeting. A special permit is
It's
called a public hearing.
Yeah, that's what I meant to say, not
Yeah.
site plan.
Anyway, okay, we don't, we can work those details as we get closer to the time we need to set it up. And as far as, well, we can work out between now and next meeting, we can figure out how many different outlets we can advertise in. Facebook, the newspaper, cable, the cable announcements. Some people actually pay attention to those.
News item on the town website.
Town website, of course. Anyway, so we'll.
That's
we'll
also
work on it.
multi-medium, right? I'm not
Yeah.
that familiar. We use multi-medium, not just text. Do we use audio, video, like those type of things? I don't know. I just think about how people receive information and how they kind of learn
Yes,
and ask
that-
questions. So
That's a problem we encounter very frequently. Is we try to find the best ways, the most efficient ways to get information to the public, and it's always more than one way. Andy?
Maybe we could ask the town administrator and the assistant town administrator to highlight it on their upcoming podcast so that people are aware.
there you go. Let's
Yes.
Or that maybe the chair of the select board could announce it.
I think we can arrange that.
What about like All Things Grafton? There's a lot of residents that are on there.
Yeah, there are
Might be
several,
someplace we wanna-
several notable Grafton Facebook pages that we can, I mean, the Town of Grafton official page, and then, various,
Yeah.
there are various ways of getting announcements from the official page
Yeah.
copied into some of these other,
Yeah,
or
you'd ask the
reposted
town to
into
post it first and then share it into those groups, so.
Yeah. Okay. I want to,
Angela has her hand.
Angela, yeah, thank you.
I just wanted to make one quick point after that. I know you said we could talk about it as we go, but if we're also sending the message out in these different channels, also being clear on where we expect people to make the official comment. So like if we're posting this on Facebook, then we're not getting like a bunch of Facebook comments that people are putting their opinions on. So making sure that no matter where we publicize this, that we then direct them where we want them to submit the comment.
Yes, I
That's
think
what I'm
we,
saying, an email address or something like that where people can submit their comments.
yeah, we've done that, and I think my most recent experience, comparable experiences with the master plan update, where we publicize that as through as many channels as we could find, but in all cases we directed comments back to the planning department. I think in our case here we have a web page which we've talked about before. We have a contact form on the web page, which would work. We might want to set up something special
I
or
think
a special
having an
email
email
address.
address for people to go through instead of filling out a contact form,
Yeah.
I think
Yes.
in this particular instance. it'd be better.
Email addresses would be helpful.
And if
It'd
we
be much
made,
better.
if we made just a Gmail, we could use Google Forms. That way we could ask questions as well as saying, here's a text box. What do
We
you
gotta be very careful. We shouldn't be responding
Yeah.
outside of a committee meeting to the public. That gets us in
This
all
is-
sorts of trouble.
That'd be more like the survey portion, I
Yeah,
think.
this is a situation where we want comments to flow from the public to us.
Yeah.
To us,
And then we deal with them at our meetings.
at our meetings.
So
Is that what we're
let
asking?
people
Is that
know
what
that we
you're
will
saying?
not
Yeah,
be.
what did you-
Yeah, so a
Okay.
Google form, you're not going back and forth. It's just an actual, it's like the contact info.
Oh,
where
okay.
You can ask a question, but it's just like a yes or no. They select their answer,
I get
and then that form gets sent, then we could look at them here. in
I
the
get you.
public.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood what you said. I apologize.
So we'll work those details.
Yep.
I think I'll work with the town administrator's office with Amber, and we'll see what we can set up for that.
Dawn has her hand up.
Don?
Hi. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. I know that we use on the town side Microsoft, so they don't have the same forms as Google, but they do have the ability to do surveys and things like that that I've used in my professional life. So if Amber hasn't set one up before, I can stop in and help her do that once we know what we want to ask, because they are really helpful and they give you analytics, and it can give us a display if we set up 3 or 5 questions. You can make a multiple choice, you can make them yes, no, and you can really get a sense of where people are falling on different things.
Yeah. Amber did mention to me a few weeks ago, however long, last time I talked to her about this committee stuff, Amber did mention to me that she can set up surveys.
Yep.
So that might turn out maybe not what we traditionally think of as a survey, but as a means of collecting the kind of input we're looking for. That might actually turn out to be a good way to do it. So we'll explore that topic further.
I think you have a good public outreach plan.
Yep. Somewhat related, one of my items here was publicizing the work in progress on the town website. Skip mentioned this, and I said I'd get back to it, so I'm getting back to it. There's sort of 2 parts to that in my mind. One is just keeping track of all the suggestions that we've received. And that may or may not be something we want to publicize on the website. Certainly we need to do that for our own purposes. Keeping track of all the suggestions we received, who's going to be responsible for an individual or subcommittee, what the current status of it is, basically information along the lines of tracking all the suggestions that we've made ourselves or received.
I'd like to volunteer. I don't mind taking that responsibility on.
One thing I would recommend is that the list of suggestions posted on the website be curated by a person and not automatic.
Yes.
Yes.
I think now the like charter review committee portion of the what town website is actually pretty good. It has a lot of good information. And so if we just added another bullet point here of like suggested amendments and then categorized just based off of ideas we've received, and it would be manual, ideas we've received, ideas we've discussed, and ideas we've decided on, and then we could discern that.
And a second part of that is, I think this is, Skip, is what you were referring to from what we did on the bylaw committee is that, what we did in the bylaw committee was for every bylaw article, articles 1 through 41, we had a sub page above our web page, and that said, this is the article, here's the latest draft revision of that article. So that that made the bylaw revisions that we were proposing, once the committee basically said, yeah, this is okay as our first draft, and we revised those drafts as we worked on it. But that was accessible via the website. The date of last revision, here's a link to the actual document. We posted the document so that people could see.
A good spreadsheet that we tracked all this stuff on. Did you have it, or did Brian?
I think it was the member of that committee that is not here. Brian had that.
Yeah, that's okay. Maybe for certain compensation, we could reach out to him, have him flush everything that's on there except the headings and keep everything else, and we could expand. If he still has it.
I could also do that. I'm proficient in sheet.
I just, it kind of, why reinvent the wheel? However, it took a while to get that going, but.
Yeah, so what we want, basically what we want is the exact mechanics of it to be defined, but it's the suggestion, every suggestion we've received. We could say where that suggestion originated. We want to say who on the committee is going to follow up on it, and what the status of it is. Do we have a proposed document with it? And the thing with the charter is, it's not the suggestions are not going to be neatly organized by charter section. So unlike what we did for the bylaws, I think the text of the charter revision proposals, it's kind of, each proposal, any one proposal might be a mix of changes to different sections of the charter. And so we'll kind of, I think we still may need to work out exactly how best to present that to the public.
Oh, yeah, it's, when they send this in, depending on the content of what comes in and the form that comes in, we may be able to readily find a section of the charter to which it applies.
Right, so I guess there's a difference between the suggestion itself, which may be change this section of the charter to do, and make these changes in these different charter sections. That's the suggestion, which itself could be subject to revision. And then there's the final charter document, which is a whole nother.
The only note on the list of suggestions and where they came from is that we list things like this committee, this department, general public, don't put names.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I don't want to necessarily identify specific people that made the suggestions.
Also, the idea that we're not going to engage in a Q&A with people by email and responding is, you're going to submit your thoughts and ideas to us, and we're going to consider them. And it's imperative that you take part in all of these conversations that you can see and hear to find out what may or may not have happened with your thing.
I was thinking there should be something in the announcement that says due to OML restrictions, the review committee will not be responding individually to comments. If you want to know how, you have to watch the meetings.
Yeah.
That's the only place we can talk about them.
With disclaimer.
Yeah.
Can you include a link to the YouTube signal?
Yeah. I have a question for you. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself here, but as we segue into,
Don't wait,
Just sit down.
I put the hat on so that no one would notice me on the way out the door.
But then you made eye contact.
I was trying to be polite.
yeah,
You put your head up just high enough that I could see it, so go ahead.
yeah, I mean, I think we're getting close. It's 10 minutes of 9 already, and I don't know how much longer we want to go
We
tonight.
should probably keep 2 hours, our meeting.
Yeah, but the question for you, Evan, one of the recommendations we're getting is to, and we have some proposed charter language to consider with that, is to change the job title, the position title, from town administrator to town manager. From the proposed changes, as I read them, it's not proposing any notable changes in the powers and duties and responsibilities, but it's proposing a change in the job title. Do you have an initial reaction to that?
Yeah, I would be in favor of that as the person in the position. I don't really want to lobby for it. I don't think that's the right move. But I do think if you remove me from the equation, I think that when I'm no longer in this position and you're advertising for the next town administrator, town manager, you're going to attract a better group of candidates, because there is a specific amount of, or a specific subset of us that are looking for manager positions and not administrators. I agree by charter, there's not a lot of difference between a manager and an administrator in the town of Grafton. The administrator is pretty strong. But yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to it, but I'm also not going to lobby for it.
Yeah, I wasn't asking you to lobby for it, but
No, I know. I'm just making that clear for everybody.
getting your opinion, which is
Yep.
consistent with other opinions we've heard.
Yeah.
There is a cost associated with that,
Okay.
changing name tags, changing stationery, and
We'll wait to make the change until after he leaves.
Yeah, that's fine too.
but I don't think I would let that dissuade me from proposing the change.
Yeah, and I don't think there's a
You
heck
are
of a lot.
funny guy, Dave.
I don't think there's a heck of a lot that we have that most everything's electronic. I mean, I have probably 450 of the original 500 business cards I got when I got here because they don't use them anymore. But most everything else is, we're printing it ourselves, so it's a easy change.
Yeah, I understand that. I've had my business cards almost 12 years. I still have most of them.
I really.
And it was outdated by the time I
conferences
got
I go to put them in for the raffle.
To win something.
Yep, that's pretty much it.
There was one time, speaking of business cards, and I shouldn't waste too much of the committee's time on it, but one time, I think this was back in the 80s, a company changed its name 3 times within the space of about a year and a day. So we got to thinking, maybe we need business cards with an electronic display on them for the company name of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, well, thanks for that, Evan.
Sure. I do plan on being available for your meetings if possible, so that if anything comes up that interacts either with my office or any other office, I can help facilitate that.
Okay.
Okay.
So with that, thank you, Evan.
All right.
Have a good one, Evan.
Bye, Evan.
We will allow you to leave now.
All right. Thank you. Have a great night.
Night, Evan.
Good night. Okay, again, in the interest of time, I don't want to spend much time on this. My agenda included charter revisions to be considered, new suggestions, and discussion of suggestions we've already received.
I do have 2 very brief suggestions.
Yeah.
I want to discuss on them too.
And actually, back on the, sort of on the outreach, in terms of presenting the proposed charter changes, I'm going to pass around, I'll send this out after the meeting too, but this is the format in which we the bylaw committee. You have enough over there? Need one more?
Yeah, we set an excellent precedent with this.
Yeah.
Just put this out by fiat.
So,
Oh,
right,
you had-
without spending a lot, you
It's the same one.
You can look at it
Come
and
back.
consider it further at the next meeting, but this is how we presented the bylaw changes. If you do something similar with the charter, basically, this is not, doesn't exactly correspond to how we would put it in a warrant article, but in terms of being able to read the changes, see what is changed in context.
Do you want me to change the way I submitted then?
As it happens, we'll get back to this in a moment, but I spent time on a couple of
already did?
years to do,
Thank you.
just to see, kind of see for myself what it looked like.
Okay.
But yeah, and again, this is, if we're all, for the
I was going to
benefit,
say you're going to share your screen, digital copy.
for the benefit of those on Zoom, let me bring up a copy of that if I can find it here.
So while he's doing that, just some technical information. We chose red and strike through so that even when they're published with non-color, they can still be seen, and the green and the underline. And the specific shades of red and green that we chose came from a website that says what colors should we use for those who are colorblind. So hope those two colors are supposed to be visually distinct, even for people that are red-green colorblind. So that you may wonder why they're kind of pink and a light green. So that there is a technical reason for that.
They're very muted on this printout too compared to the, yeah.
Good job.
Yeah, I think I don't know how exactly it compares. It may be the pink and green look a little more muted, particularly the pink on the printout, but for readability to the colorblind, the shade of red had to be fairly pale. But this, you kind of see how, and we put at the top of it an explanation of the changes that were being proposed. So we might end up doing like one of these for every charter article, or I haven't totally worked out how I might do this, where you have say the proposed change for town administrator overlaps with some other changes. So I'm still scratching my head thinking how best that might end up being presented. As a general format, highlighting the changes in this particular way seems like it worked well for us for the bylaw committee. If we're at least tentatively comfortable with doing things that way for the charter, I hear no objection. We'll sort of move forward to this, adapting it to whatever extent we need to the specifics of the charter changes. Okay, so.
Want to approve the minutes before we adjourn?
Yeah, I was going to hand out Mark's suggested changes. Seeing how it's kind of difficult to send a paper through Zoom, I also plan to electronically email these to everybody. So if you want to, anybody who won't, at this point, we don't really have time to discuss these in any detail. But
Well, you should say, if you're going to hand them out, what they are, so that it's discussed in public, so you can share it with the committee.
yes, so we've got 3 proposals from Mark. One is to provide appointment authority for the fire chief to the town manager. This is assuming that the town manager change is approved. We've got.
I think I sent them in order. I said, change it to town manager, and then I said, to have the town manager appoint the fire chief.
I'm not mentioning it here in order, but, this is sort of the key one. An amendment to replace town administrator with town manager. And one thing you don't get a really good sense of from these is what's changing. Mark has written these more as something close to what a warrant article or a petition to the legislature would be. Oh, the third one is budget development schedule and submission deadlines. Yeah, and as I mentioned or alluded to earlier, I've taken the change from town administrator to town manager, and I've produced, let me just quickly put that up on the board here. If I can find it. Where did I put that? Oh, here we go.
Forgive me, everyone, but I'm on bedtime duty. I have to get running. I don't know if there's an official thing I'm supposed to say before I leave or anything.
Thank
so
you for
forgive
letting me know so I can put it in the minutes.
Bye, Mike.
Bye, Mike.
All right, good. See you all next time. I'll look for the next meeting time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, Mike.
Good night.
It's almost past my bedtime.
Because if it's that easy, I have to go to bed.
So this is just a little bit of, no, that's not the one I wanted to display. Sorry about that.
Well, you'll get out those 3 amendments to everybody.
Yes. All right, yeah, I'm not going to take the tender. I thought I had it set up
That's
to
all right.
display here, but
I make a motion, we approve the minutes from the last meeting as presented.
May I?
I just have a
No,
question.
sorry.
on
Mr.
that.
Chair? I believe Nate's name is spelled wrong
That is
in the
correct.
minutes.
Bob, so is yours.
Bob is spelled wrong?
Yeah.
The Toma is spelled
Oh,
wrong.
my name's spelled wrong as well.
No, my name is spelled correctly. And then,
No, look at page 2,
oh, okay, then on page 2,
2016, Mark
Yes.
Dad and Bob Toma.
and they left off Skip's name.
That's fine.
Or if those were the, I didn't catch, so I started this with asking AI to give me a set of minutes, and it gave a bunch of it, and then I had to go and fix a bunch of the names, and then fill in all the stuff it didn't handle. I must have some of those.
And there's
Yeah.
one more, my name is spelled wrong on there as well. It's on there as R-E-Y and it should be E-R-Y.
Okay, that one I probably didn't even know. So can you say that again, please?
Yeah, it's Jeffrey, Jefffery.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Amy Berry, the town clerk's name is spelled the first time is B-A-R-R-Y.
Yeah, that's one of those. I didn't catch that one.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a question? Under the
Yep.
open meeting law, is it permissible to submit,
Draft minutes.
no, is it permissible to submit changes to the drafter of the minutes, spelling errors and stuff like that, outside of the open meeting law? So that we're not sitting here saying his name was spelled wrong, my name was spelled wrong?
Correcting scrivener's errors?
Yeah, is there a way so that we could just say, hey, Greg, I noticed these changes when you read it?
I would say that those are not matters of opinion.
Thank you.
I think for
Save a lot of time.
it would save a lot of time, and for safety's sake, I think that should be one-on-one between the clerk and the person.
Yeah.
Not as a,
Yeah.
No, don't send it to everybody, just contact Greg directly.
because it's mine is Kelley for my last name.
Okay.
All right, so there was a motion. Did I hear a second?
There was never a second.
I seconded it.
Oh, did you?
So the
As
question I
amended.
have is as I did not look at them in detail, AKA did not look at them, because they're just reflections of the recorded thingamajiggy anyways, but you said, did you include a part about, we didn't start for the first 20 minutes? Because of technical difficulties?
And I saw
It seemed
Greg
like you
today.
guys were saying,
I saw Greg today earlier, and I said, do we really need to put that in the minutes? It just doesn't, why does it,
yeah.
but I'm glad you asked Tom, yeah, I
Yeah,
guess
I-
we do have to put it in the minutes.
I will stop that as technical difficulties.
Thank you.
So moderator Don Anderson attempted to call the meeting to order at 7 PM, but was unable to do so due to technical difficulties.
Perfect.
So I would say that I will make that amendment. If anyone else has any other typographical errors, send them to me, and just to make sure I get them all, and then I will publish a new version to the town clerk.
All right, so I gather that we have a motion on the floor, and it's been seconded, to approve the minutes as drafted
Mr. Chair.
with the corrections noted with corrections as noted both here and need to be communicated outside of the meeting to the clerk. Angela?
My question is separate from that, so I'm good with that.
Okay. With no further discussion on the motion, take a roll call. Dawn Anderson?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Mike has left the meeting. Angelina?
Aye.
Skip?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Motion carried unanimously. Greg will take care of the details.
Angela has a question.
Angela, you had a question.
I just had a quick question about the bylaws. When I go on the website, like I can't find the information from the like bylaw review committee, and I'm just wondering if there's any other info to kind of like educate myself on that committee and that process. I know you handed out a paper and you said you would send it out, but is there,
Yeah.
I guess, anything else that we were able to like access to be able to just kind of see what was done there?
I got taken down. I think they might be able to.
Most of the bylaw committee's webpage has been removed from the town website. I don't know what remnants exist.
If you go to the town meeting information for October of 2023, the report of the bylaws study committee is linked from that page.
Yeah, so you can.
Okay.
Right, the bylaw committee's report will tell you quite a bit about the bylaw committee and its work.
And they shouldn't be almost there.
And if you want to see those meetings, they should all be up on Grafton Television on YouTube.
Yes.
If you can't sleep at night, put that on.
Yeah, the owl will
All right, so,
serenade you.
Yes.
again, I will send out by email to all the committee members the documents that we have discussed this evening. That, I think the only one we distributed ahead of the meeting was the minutes, so all the other documents I will send out.
Good meeting. I'm glad town council came. That was very educational.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded that the meeting be adjourned. Motion is not debatable. Dawn?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Angelina?
Aye.
Skip?
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Jack?
Aye.
Greg?
Aye.
Angela?
Aye.
And Dave votes aye. Motion carried unanimously. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for bearing with us as late as we ran, but I think certainly our time with town council was worthwhile.
Very much.
Excellent.
I can read a room. I won't suggest
Good night,
my
everyone.
changes, but
Aye.
Good night.
Aye. Thanks all.
if everyone
Thank
who
you.
lives in Grafton would be so